All right, guys, we are back, and of course, everything now works again, including the Blackmagic. So, give me a second, and we're about to go on in here. So, of course, now everything works properly. So, to answer your question, what device do you use for live streaming? I actually use two different devices. Let me pop back over to me. So the wide shot. So I use two different devices for live streaming. I'd show them to you right now, but everything's plugged in. As you see, it's a little temperamental if you don't start it off right. The best one that I use is the Elgato Camlink, which is a USB to HDMI input. The reason that's my favorite is it actually works really well on Mac or PC. There's a cheaper one that I bought afterwards, which is actually the one that's working a little bit better. But it only works on Windows, and it's like a generic, it's called a full HD video capture card to USB. It doesn't even have a name, that's how generic it is. The video quality is pretty much the same as the Elgato, but it doesn't work on Mac. So since I do everything on Mac, I had to use this PC partition, and it's just a pain, but it does work. Let's go over to the Blackmagic real quick. Let me get my this switching app working. All right, switch app, remote settings. All right, so let's bring you guys over to the Blackmagic, and let's show you guys what this thing looks like even over the live stream. So here's two of our little models right here. We've got Stormtrooper 1 and Stormtrooper 2. You can't really see it so much on the live stream, but when I get really close in, you can actually notice, and the reason I bring this up is I'm using a Viltrox past optical focal reducer. You notice there's a little bit of fringing on these guys. In chroma aberration, like purple chroma, when you get really close in. Let's see if this will show it. But it does render out very, very nicely. Pierluca 72, I use Matrox Monarch HD. Yeah, I've heard of that. It's pretty cool. You know, with these small little devices I have over here, they're literally the size of thumb drives, so it just makes it easy to use them on the go. Let's pop on one of these lights so I can show you guys with proper lighting what this stuff looks like. Boom. All right, so let's get Mr. and Mrs. Stormtrooper out of the way. Let's get something else. I'll actually step in there in a second, guys, so you guys can kind of see skin tones. But in the meantime, I wanted to just show you kind of how this camera looks in film mode on the live stream. Also, I'll show you video mode and extended mode. Through my experience, I am not a fan of extended mode, but it is there if you need color. So here is Rocket, if you're a fan of Guardians of the Galaxy. This is in film mode. Do you think if you try to plug in your monitor to the SWIT batteries that have a DC output and then connect directly to the DC, if you try to connect to your monitor, if you're saying, do I think the Switchtronics batteries can power both at the same time? Yes, I do believe they can power both at the same time. If you have either two outgoing ports, or if you have a splitter, it should be fine. I have a splitter here, but it doesn't split DTAP. It actually just splits. Let me toss over here. So I have a splitter, I don't know where exactly it is, but it basically splits 2.5 and it puts it out into two 2.5s. So if you have a 2.5 out, I guess, or a 2.5 in, it'll do a 2.5 out, or sorry. So you have a 2.5 out, it'll do 2.5 in to two 2.5 outs, and then it should give you enough DC power. especially with how I set this up on here, it should definitely give you enough to do this camera and the monitor. The camera is a power hungry. That would be the battery solution. Oh, so Ben, you I guess you joined a little bit late. Let me pop up the battery solution for you. So this is the battery solution I came up with. I showed earlier on the chat. It's basically a dummy V-mount battery, and sorry you guys are going through this twice. I'll just go through real quick. It's a dummy V-mount battery that uses Sony NPF batteries as the power source, and it has a D-tap out, which goes to 2.5, which then, if you had a splitter, you could split this 2.5 into two different sources, and that could power your monitor and your camera at the same time. Pause this over here. So let's go over to the Blackmagic really quick. Would that be a battery solution? Yes, that would be a battery solution. So let's pop over to the Blackmagic, and I want to show you guys kind of the difference between video mode and the extended video mode, and why I'm kind of not a fan of it. One thing I also mentioned in yesterday's stream, which I found is amazing, and I don't really hear many people talking about it, the camera actually lets you change the f-stops in 0.1 increments, which is crazy. I haven't had a camera that can let me do that unless the lens itself was a clickless aperture. So I love that. Cool little hidden feature of this camera. So let's go over here. Let's show you, going into the video mode right now, let's show you, this is video mode right here, just to show you the difference in color. I actually like video mode a little more than extended video mode, and I will pop to extended video mode now. Here we go. For whatever reasons, in certain situations, the extended video looks better, but for the most part, it's just a little bit too punchy in my personal opinion. So if I ever had to use the video mode, which I would for these kinds of live streams, it would be the video mode itself. The other thing which I'll test with you guys live is how the LUTs output. So we're going to put this back into film mode, and so yes, I just had some video and extended video modes, but there's also LUTs, and you can add your own custom LUTs, and they also let you do things like go to Rec 2020 HLG. I haven't put any LUTs on here just because I haven't found any I liked for the Blackmagic yet, but let's go here. So I'm going to put on HLG, and I'm going to hit my shortcut button, and let's see if it outputs it over the HDMI. I have just outputted the HLG LUT. Let's see if it pops up. Oh, that's interesting. It showed my, okay, so the LUTs do pop up. Great. It's a little dark. Let's pop up the ISO a little bit. I'm going to pop this puppy to ISO 1000. Now it looks a lot better. This is with the HLG LUT activated, so it's good to know that this LUT actually shows up through the HDMI when you're using it. And it looks okay. Any questions in the chat before we go through further? Pop back over here. So those are just a few little things that I haven't really seen people kind of go through, so I figured since I can, I'll go through them live, not only for me, but for you guys, just to see how it works. So it's interesting to kind of go through this all together. Let's see, any other questions on what you can do? Because as far as that's concerned, you know, those were really the few things I wanted to go over. I wanted to show the battery solution today. I wanted to show the live streaming off the Blackmagic. I wanted to test out this lav, and it sounds like this lav may be a little bit too hot. Oh, it's because it was, maybe because it was in my shirt. But anyways, a friend of mine has just bought the GH5S. I'm surprised at the good quality with which it was built. Saw in other videos. Yes. Okay. So as far as build quality, I have the GH5 right here. I like the build quality of the GH5 more than the Blackmagic. It just feels a little bit more rugged, and then also I have this like easy cover thing on it, so it protects it a little bit more from scratches and stuff. But even without the easy cover on, it just feels like it almost feels heavier, although I think the pocket's slightly heavier when you weigh it, but it just feels like more solid. The Blackmagic is great. It just has a cheap feel to it, but I mean, at the same time, I'm not really complaining because, like I said in yesterday's video, you know, I'm able to mount the Blackmagic to my Viltrox adapter, which is mounted on the cage. So, I mean, if the camera was heavy, there would be way too much stress on that mount, and I just wouldn't feel comfortable doing it. What is your opinion between the GH5 and the Blackmagic? Okay, so my opinion is that they are two very different cameras. I see a lot of people comparing the GH5 to the Blackmagic, and it's kind of like, yes, they are both micro four thirds, and they both shoot 10-bit, but they're different beasts. So let's say comparing the GH5S to the Blackmagic, it's similar dynamic range. However, Cinema 5D did test the dynamic range in their video that just came out today, and the Blackmagic actually beats it by around a stop, which was interesting. But where the GH5S beats it is you can have internal batteries that last way longer than that. So you can kind of go on shoots with a few batteries and it will last you a whole day on the GH5S versus a Blackmagic. I think it goes back to what I said in yesterday's video again, where it's, you know, the GH5s, the A7Ss, the Fuji, the Canons, the Nikons, they're all DSLR variants. They're not technically DSLRs anymore because they're mirrorless, but they all have the ergonomics of these easy to use cameras, which are great. It makes video producing a lot easier, a lot quicker, a lot better in certain aspects for the indie filmmaker who needs to be quick and on the go. With the Blackmagic, it's more like a traditional cinema camera where you get unparalleled image quality, and you get professional connections such as Mini XLR, the new locking cable. Although it's a pain to get these power cords right now, I like the fact that it locks into the camera so it can't just be pulled out. But then also you have professional codecs. You have the ProRes, you have the Cinema DNG, you have Blackmagic RAW coming out soon. But the file sizes of ProRes and Cinema DNG compared to the types of file sizes you get on this camera, the GH5 and the GH5S, it's a different ball game. When you go on the lowest compression of ProRes Proxy, the quality isn't as good as, for instance, using the 150 megabit codec in the GH5. Now, I think that's, you know, it's compressed. That's why you get a little bit better, but it is compressed. It's less compressed on there, but you also have less quality when you use ProRes Proxy. So as another tip, as like yesterday, you do want to stick to ProRes LT minimum. But I mean, that's my kind of roundabout. I think you can't really compare the GH5. I mean, the GH5 isn't as good in low light. The GH5 has internal stabilization that's amazing. But it doesn't have those crazy codecs like that does, and it doesn't have the crazy low light like this does. So they're different animals. A lot of people say the GH5 is for vloggers. It can be for vloggers, but it's such a good camera because it's versatile in so many different situations. If you light your scenes with the GH5, there's no reason where you can't get amazing cinematic footage with the GH5. With one of the documentaries I'm working on right now, where we basically started off using all GH5s. We incorporated the Blackmagic just because it came out and we're using it for some B-roll and some extra camera angles during the shoot. However, we used the GH5 for most of it so far, and the results we're getting are just amazing. They're cinematic, but we are lighting everything, so that comes into play as well. I could go on and on about the differences of what I think between them, but in the end, they're just very different beasts. It's hard to compare a cinema camera to a DSLR when the feature set's a little bit different. Any other questions? Otherwise, I think, there was one other topic I was going to get onto today. and I'll get onto it, and then unless there's anything else, we'll finish it up. So a lot of people are talking about external SSDs, what they're using to write to. So I used to use the Atamo Shogun when I had the GH4 and I needed the 10-bit out of the GH4, and I kept all of my SSDs. So I have a 480 gigabyte SanDisk SSD in here, and then I have a 256 gigabyte, something like that, SSD in here. It's hard, I gotta label them. I just put them back in the caddies the other day. But basically, the solution I found to these I found an SSD to USB-C cable, and it works great. You know, you just plug it in you plug it into the slot, it works. However, it takes the slot of the SD card, so it's been easier since I only use the SSD card to just take the SD card out and then plug this in, and it works after that. Sometimes it gets a little wonky when I plug this in and the SD card's already in there. But I've been using these as my SSDs, and they've been working great. I basically get RAW up to 30 frames lossless, but 60p I'm not really getting that well. I'm getting what was the compression for 60p? I was able to do RAW. I was able to do 4:1 on this in RAW on 60p, but I wasn't able to do any higher for long periods of time. So just know going into these, if you need 60p RAW, I don't know why you would, but if you do need it, you're going to need something faster than this. I haven't messed with the CFast cards yet, just because the only time I've needed RAW is 430p and 24p. But if I get to the point where I'm going to need 60p RAW, I'm probably going to have to move to the CFast, because it seems like those are the fastest for it. And then other than that, I guess one last thing to go with. So today was my first day I was able to use this power bank that I've been showing a few times throughout the interview. And it's worked great so far. However, I noticed some weird things happening today that makes me wonder about functionality of the cord, the slot that Blackmagic has in here. It's funny that it's Halloween and this is happening, but I had the camera just sitting earlier. I was setting it up. I left it to be, and all of a sudden, here, let me pull it in so I can kind of show you. All of a sudden, you know, it's on here, and the metadata pops up. I'm like, oh, that's kind of weird. I just let it sit there. All of a sudden, it goes into EXIF data. I'm like, okay, whatever. And I go to hit back, and then all of a sudden it goes into here, and things just start getting pressed like a ghost. I'm like, that's kind of weird, whatever. I'm just going to turn the camera off, turn it back on. Did that, it was fine. However, later on in the day, as we were done, the camera was on again as I was packing up, and I noticed the lighting changed in the camera. I'm like, oh, what was that? That's kind of weird. I noticed that somehow it switched to HFR mode in 4K, and so it was 60p basically over 23 frames for the HFR mode. But when you do that, 180 degrees changes what your exposure is. So I kind of found that kind of weird. Where I'm getting at is I wonder if there's some kind of data that can go through this cord as well. I don't know. I'm not saying there is. I'm just wondering if maybe there's some data transfer, because maybe in the future they'll have some kind of expansion for this. Again, I don't know. I just noticed that it's only happening with this power source that I'm using. So I don't know. Maybe it's just weird. We'll see what happens. Maybe this power source is a little funky with this, and if that's the case, I won't use it anymore. But other than those minor little things, it's been amazing as far as how long it's lasted. You still wouldn't get 60p RAW 1:1 on a CFast card. Okay, so that's good to know. So then I guess the real question is, can you get 60p RAW 1:1 lossless? What can you get it on if you can't get it on a CFast card? Is there some kind of SSD that is faster than the SanDisk that I have that will do it? I don't know. That would be interesting to find out, though, because obviously the camera is capable of outputting it. I hope some kind of battery grip which is attached to the camera, nothing that is big bulk. Your solution's very good, but that does not seem practical. Okay, so where I agree with you is for like gimbal type work, instead of, I'm actually gonna show you a little bit. So I'm gonna unplug the camera right here so I can show you how to do it. So if you use a Ronin M, there is actually a way using my solution you can power the camera off the Ronin M battery, and you don't have to use this bulky V-mount solution. So on the Ronin M, and it stinks because it's in the other room and it's set apart, so I don't want to have to go grab it, but on the front and the back of where you mount the Ronin M, there's actually D-tap slots. So what you can do to power the Blackmagic and be in a gimbal situation is you can just plug this into the D-tap slot. I have this little adapter I made, just wrap it around the gimbal, plug this in, and you can fully power the camera off of the Ronin M battery. The original Ronin has the D-tap. I don't own a Ronin S, so unfortunately I don't know what kind of power out the Ronin S has, but I'm assuming it has something, but I don't know what it is. So that would be something to look into, but it is possible on gimbals to power them from certain gimbals, have DC out. I guess, you know, the next time I go live, I'll come back to you with how long the DJI Ronin M was able to power the Blackmagic for. When I had the Pocket Cinema Camera, the first one, I had just a, because that connection was a lot more common, I had just a D-tap to Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera, DC, whatever that was. And so I literally just plugged straight into the camera. Thought hurricane season was over. Yeah, I know, right? So yeah, I just plugged straight into the camera, and it was it lasted a decent amount of time. I'd say normally I got like 6 hours of battery on the Ronin, and when it was plugged into the camera, I got about 2.5. But it was fully powering the Blackmagic as well as the Ronin, and it was being used full time. So I'd imagine it would at least power this for an hour, hour and a half. But you know, to each their own if it works. Have you seen the Wolf Crow videos? Have you had problems similar to him? I have not had problems similar to him, but I will tell you, if you've tuned into yesterday's video, I already mentioned this, I did have problems with using LPE6 batteries that were not Canon and the Blackmagic. I used a brand called Ula. They were, you know, like $15 on Amazon. They actually lasted like 50 minutes in the camera. But the problem with the Ula ones is, and I tested this before I even turned it on because it was too late at that point, but they got stuck in the battery compartment. And it seems that if these batteries get stuck in the battery compartment, it can do damage to the camera. Same with the dummy batteries. That's why I actually, where I got this 2.5 out was from the dummy battery I ordered for this, the LPE6 one, and I just cut the cord and used it to splice to this because it was easier. I want my own right now. Anybody know a better seller than my pre-order? The good news is, for people who have not received the camera yet, it seems that smaller retailers are getting them in, and there's not a line for them at the smaller retailers. So if you kind of look around, you can see, you can kind of see out there. You know, a friend of mine already has his Blackmagic Pocket camera. You just have to be on the lookout. You have to kind of do your research, see what smaller retailers are in your area. If you're in the United States, there's tons. So you just need to basically make some phone calls, and you may just have to pay for shipping. But it is possible to get it before 2019. You just have to find the right places. My experience tells me that part of the reason Adorama and B&H are so backed up is a lot of the smaller retailers made you either put a deposit or they made you actually pay for the whole thing up front. And a lot of people obviously did not want to do that. So where Adorama and B&H are kind of change it up, when you order from them, you're in line based on when you ordered, but they just authorize your card. They don't actually charge you until it ships. Not a plug for either site. I'm just letting you know my feelings on this. And my guess is because people rather only get charged when they're getting the physical product. A lot of people went to B&H and Adorama, and by doing that, it created huge queues where you have the little guys who ordered some of the cameras, but no one wanted to put full pre-orders down. Now they have them available. So everybody pre-ordered on B&H. Yep, I pre-ordered on B&H. The only reason I got mine so early is I literally pre-ordered the second that they went online the day after the announcement of the Blackmagic. If I didn't do it so early, there's no way, because I know people who just got their camera last week that actually did their pre-order the same day as me, but I did it like at 9 or 10 in the morning, and they did it like later on in the day. So believe it or not, time of day matters, even if it's on the same day. No, they definitely don't have enough. I was number 10 on the queue last week. Hopefully I will get it soon. I hope you get it too soon, man. The camera's been a great camera. I love it. It's definitely going to be my, like my go-to camera for any music videos, short film. A lot of my doc work for my interviews, it's my main camera right now. I'm still using the GH5 for the B-roll because the IBIS kind of makes getting the B-roll a little bit easier without having to lug out the Ronin all the time. The footage did look pretty awesome on the Ronin M for the little bit I used it for. So this camera will be awesome on a gimbal. It's just you don't really have any automations. Something you guys actually may know. Apparently, there's Bluetooth on this camera, and there's Bluetooth on the Ursa. There's some controller for it. I went on the App Store because I heard that it's only on the App Store right now, and it seems like there are apps that will control the camera through Bluetooth, but they're not made by Blackmagic, and they're all charging, which I don't mind paying $5 for the app. It's just, I thought that there was a Blackmagic one that was out there for free. Do you guys know about that? Would be my question. I live in Chile, and here costs twice. I can see that. It's unfortunate, man. I live in Europe. My only chance of a camera from the United Kingdom or Germany. Yeah, again, just look around, man. You can find smaller shops that have it, and fingers crossed. Maybe they can give you a heads up on when the camera's coming in, and you could scoop it up, or they could ship it to you. There are shops that will have them. I'm trying to remember what I ordered. I remember I ordered something a while ago. I think it was the Ronin. Oh, when the Ronin M first came out, the Ronin M was kind of like that, where for the first month or two, it was really hard to get them because it was the cheapest gimbal at the time. And I found just this little shop in Arizona, and they had them. And I got it like the day after the release that everyone was getting them. So it's possible. And if you pay attention to the forums on Facebook, there are people who are telling their stories, and they're not just telling you their stories to throw it in your face. Hey, I got a camera before you. I think there's people out there that are generally trying to help everybody because they know how passionate people are about this camera and how excited people are and that they want it. So they're just trying to give everybody little details here and there on what you can do in order to get it early without having to go through this huge wait. Yeah. So anyways, you guys have any other questions for me? Wow, this actually, I think because of the issues in the beginning, this went, as long as yesterday and a little bit longer than I expected, but that's not a bad thing. Again, just to apologize if this mic really does sound that bad. I tested it earlier and it sounded okay, but that the problem with doing everything on my own and being the talent is not being able to have somebody listen in and not. If I had somebody to be my audio engineer, that wasn't me. It would have been solved a lot quicker, but I'm just trying to get this thing rolling. I will just use the podcast mic for now on because I actually didn't move around as much as I thought I was going to. But yeah, I see there's some more people joining on in. If you guys have any questions, I'll stick on for a few more minutes. I just noticed the chat was getting a little stale. 8 people watching. I guess, one of the things I can show you guys real quick before we pop back on the Blackmagic. You know what? I guarantee you that actually probably, popping it on and off probably ruined the feed, didn't it? Let's see. Yep. Okay, so good to know. When the Blackmagic gets turned off, it mucks up the feed on Elgato. I forgot that I had a battery in there, so I could have just kept it on the whole time. But all right, so I really have doubt of buying the Pocket. My problem is the battery life. You know, in the end, Benjamin, it's to each their own. You know, you gotta kind of have to weigh it out, and you also have to see what you have now. And if what you have now is fine for what you're doing, then there may not even be a reason to upgrade. My personal idea of why I went for the Blackmagic is, I have a lighting kit already. I don't necessarily need to shoot RAW, but I like the fact that it could shoot at the higher ISOs and it was cleaner. And I could basically use my travel lighting kit and travel with this camera and be okay to do things like, for instance, like outside. I can use a lot less light in shaded areas to get kind of the exposures that I needed versus, you know, having lights that pack a much bigger punch that I did have to use with the GH5 just because it didn't have as much of the high ISO ability. So to each their own. Everyone has their own reason for going into another camera. I can just tell you mine, but unfortunately, you know, I don't know the answer for everyone's why. I think everyone's just different on that. But before I ramble on too much, I guess now is a good time to end the stream. Again, sorry it went so long in the beginning. I'll have it sorted for next time. Also know little things. It's durable enough for travel, i.e. going to the beach, hiking in there. Okay, well, Harry, thank you for commenting. I have to say, so far, I would almost say no, and here's why. First day I had the camera, I went out to a mountain bike trail. My goal was just to kind of go out and, you know, check the trail out, see what's going on. I have a very secure backpack. I actually put my Mavic 2 Pro in there as well. I had my Mavic 2 Pro, the controllers, the batteries, and then I had the Blackmagic. I noticed it was jumping around a lot, and when I got back, it's hard because all of this happened the same day with the batteries being put in here that were too big for it and getting stuck in here, but also the thing was just jumping around in my backpack, and I got back and there was like a weird line in the screen at the end of the day. It wasn't horrible, but I didn't notice it when I first got there, and it's not like I was doing crazy jumps on the mountain bike range. It was almost just like hard bike riding. I didn't want to do anything crazy because I had the Blackmagic with me, and I was really just trying to get some cool nature shots. And so basically what I would say is, if you're taking it to the beach, just be careful. I wouldn't, you know, keep this in a backpack and on anything too rugged of an activity like I did, just because, like I said earlier in the broadcast, if you missed it, when you hold this thing, it does feel cheap. It does feel light. But then there's good parts to that. If you scroll back earlier to the video, I kind of go over that, but there are good parts to it to being lighter, but you just have to be careful with it. I have to definitely baby this camera a lot more than I have to baby the GH5. I can go mountain biking and have the GH5 in my backpack and feel 100% confident everything's going to be okay. Even my Mavic 2, I can go biking and think everything's going to be okay. With the Blackmagic, I wouldn't do that. I would just be careful with it, and I would use it, treat it like you would a Red camera as far as being delicate with it and not throwing it around, because, listen, as you guys probably know, Red cameras do have problems, kind of like cars, and you got to baby them. And I would kind of treat this like that. I would baby it, at least for now, while it's harder to kind of get them. And I was very fortunate that when I sent mine in for warranty, they had one. I guess the problems that I had with it, there was a few more issues, like certain lights not coming on. The problems that I had, they couldn't fix in a timely manner, so they just sent me a replacement. But I would just be careful. It's not waterproof. Yes, it's not waterproof, and there are fans on this camera in the front as compared to a GH5 that, if there are fans, they're very small and they're hidden. Dust and everything can get in these fans in the front, and so one of the things you have to think about with this camera is longevity. How long will this thing last if it's in like, crazy areas such as the beach or the desert, areas with a lot of particles just floating all around. So you do have to be careful. What about the fan? So it's funny you bring that up, Benjamin. Today was actually the first day that I didn't notice the fan noise when I looked at the footage, but it was just, I was in an extremely silent room, and I heard a little noise, and I'm like, what is that? And I go up to it, and I listen, and I could barely hear it. Actually, you know what would be interesting? I'm gonna take this off, and I'm gonna put it next to the fan to show you how quiet it is. So, here. It's very quiet, and it doesn't come out in the footage. All right, so I did that for a quick second. I'm hoping nothing crazy happened, but as you can probably tell, the fan is not very loud. It is audible in certain situations, as far as you can maybe hear it, and those certain situations have to be like complete and utter silence. Fan noise is not a problem on this camera. Does the fan have access to the sensor? If you were recording in a dusty place, could it enter the sensor? I don't think the fan has access to the sensor as far as dust coming into the fan and actually directly touching the sensor. I do not believe that. I doubt it. I have faith in you. Yes, I have faith in the engineers as well. I think that, you can even, you know what? Now that the Blackmagic, we're not going to use it for the live stream since I'd have to turn the stream off. Let me show you guys. Let's turn this puppy off. Let's do this. So I have a nice little way how I take my Blackmagic off pretty quickly. Kind of just push this in, and then since it's mounted to the speed booster, voila. So let me get these puppies on. Also, one of the things I'll mention too is I actually, to get the HDMI and the power to go into the camera today, I actually had to undo every little protection notch. So it was a little annoying, but it is what it is. Let me go up to here. Would you have light leaks if the fan had access to the sensor? I believe so. I think if the fan had access to the sensor, 100% you would have light leaks. And that's why I don't believe that there is. Show you guys up close really quick, since we're in not so much of a crazy area for it. All right, here we go. So as you can see, it actually looks pretty nice. But yeah, if there was access to the from the fans to the sensor, there'd be a lot of issues. I think the fans are more to cool the computer components than to cool the sensor. And if they are to cool the sensor, maybe they're cooling it from behind. But there would definitely be bad implications if I mean, look how big these fans are. They're here. There's the fan underneath here. One thing I'll actually bring up, down here, this little area, it gets kind of hot after a while. I'm actually very fortunate. The way I have it mounted, there's complete open air right here. So it never gets too hot to where anything it's touching gets hot. And it doesn't damage, it doesn't prevent the fan from getting the air it needs to cool or anything like that. But if you're holding it for a long period of time or keeping it on your lap, just know, specifically down here, it does get very hot. Let me pop back into the focus here. All right. If you passed a thread through the sensor, would you see it through the lens? I don't know. I would assume kind of not. It would kind of be out of focus. I probably wouldn't want to test that though, because I'm imagining what you're talking about would mean you're putting some kind of thread here in between the sensor. I don't necessarily think that's smart in case any kind of particles kind of come off the thread and get into the sensor area. Because I mean, as you know, even getting dust out of a sensor is kind of a pain. You know, sometimes if you're lucky, it can just get blown off. But I mean, if you're not, you have to go get a sensor cleaning kit. I've actually had to do that with the GH5 to get a sensor cleaning kit. I came back from Israel with the GH5, and it wasn't like crazy dirty, but I noticed, forget why, but I was using a lens and I basically stopped all the way down to like f22. And at f22, all of a sudden I noticed all of these specks, and I'm like, open up the lens, look on the lens itself, on the back, there was nothing. Look at the sensor, shine a light with the camera off, everywhere. And of course it was from lens changes in Israel. There's a lot of dust and sand and stuff everywhere, but through the fan. No, I don't think if you put anything through the fan, I don't think there's any kind of access to the sensor through the fan. If there was, you'd have issues, as Pierre said before, you'd have light leak issues, and you know that doesn't make for a great cinema camera unless that's your intended look. One of the things I haven't tried, which I probably should try soon, are some light leak experiments. Part of the reason I haven't is I think right now I don't have any of my vintage lenses here. It's pretty much the only thing I have close to manual lenses is a lot of my Canon EF mounts. And I'd rather just try them with vintage lenses, but I do want to see how light leaks look on this camera. That would probably be pretty cool. We're at 57 minutes. Okay, I went for another almost 15 minutes. Didn't expect that. The chat's actually slowly growing. So, I mean, if you guys have questions and you guys are watching, and I'm not going to say I'm the magical genius that knows every answer to every question, but if I do know the answer from using this camera over the past 3 weeks, I guess today it's been a month. So yeah, over the past month of having this camera, if you have any questions, I will try my best to answer it. So Sigma 18 to 35 without stabilization, but a speed booster on the Ronin S or Panasonic for the Ronin S working run and gun situation. I know this is not run and gun, but I will do. Yeah, I mean, listen, me personally, I wouldn't use this camera in a run and gun scenario, but that's me. I'm used to the ease of use in the GH5 to where, you know, if I'm trying to get B-roll, if I'm trying to be stealthy, if I don't want to draw a lot of attention and I just need to get my exposure quick, make sure that the shots look nice and clean, that they're stable, and even if I don't want to use a Ronin, or if I do, then that's a little bit different, but if I want to just be nice and compact, that's why I like the GH5 over this. But you can do run and gun with this. It's going to take you're going to have to kind of come up with your own method, but there are ways. I mean, there are ways to do it with the original Pocket, which was harder to use than this camera, in my opinion. So that's just me. And yes, I typically do use my Sigma 18 to 35, even when I'm doing B-roll on the GH5, just because I love the way that lens resolves images. It's great. For the money, it's an amazing lens. I heard that the BMP Pocket has a glass that protects the sensor. Is that so? Okay, so let's see. It's possible, but I think what you're hearing is more along the lines of the original Pocket had like a glass protector over the lens, over the sensor. And I think people are expecting the same kind of glass to be on this. And when I look at the sensor, I'm not saying there's no glass, but I think the filter thread, or whatever it's called, the filter stack glass, isn't as much on this camera. I think that's part of the reason why they basically have come. There's a little bit of conflicting information from Blackmagic, because when the camera was first announced, there was a rep that basically said that they believed Metabones was going to come out with a new speed booster for the Blackmagic. But then Metabones said you don't really need a new speed booster. You can use our existing products, which you can. We've tested. I think that was due to the thicker filter stacks on the older Blackmagic cameras, that they needed those specifically made speed boosters in order to prevent things like aberrations and stuff when you're shooting wide open. Again, I do see a little bit of aberrations, as I showed earlier in the video of the two stormtroopers with the live feed from the camera. But it isn't crazy. It almost has kind of like a vintage feel to it, where I'm okay with that. So yeah, just looking at the chat right now. No problem, guys. Thank you for coming in and hanging in the chat with me and asking questions over here. If you guys weren't here, we wouldn't be doing the chat today. Like I said earlier, you know, doing this chat with you guys not only helps me, but I hope it can help you, or I hope you guys can kind of teach me some stuff, and I can teach you some stuff if I can. So, pretty much went through everything. I told you guys the little bugs, and you know what? I think it's going to be a good place to call it for today. I know I tried doing that about 15, 20 minutes ago, but I was glad not to. So basically where I'll end off is every Monday at 6:30. Those are typically my days dedicated to, Mondays are my days dedicated to uploading. So I'd like to kind of do this every Monday at 6:30. If you guys want to come and join me, I'll basically talk about my experiences over that week with the Blackmagic. I kind of like doing the live videos more than doing a whole vlog because I like the whole interaction with you guys. And it kind of gives me ideas of something like that did happen this week. Here's my experience with it, rather than me coming up with certain subjects for videos, which I will do some of them, but again, like I said, this will be mostly live feeds. So again, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, I'll have someone here with me to help me with the audio. We'll also do some more experimenting with the camera, and we'll do that live as well. Again, with someone to help me here, things go a lot smoother, so I don't have to kind of be everything myself. So until then, what will the theme be of your next video? Well, I think for the next video this week, I'm doing an interview for a doc. So I think my theme for the next week's video will be using the Blackmagic in a interview setting, because it doesn't necessarily have to be documentary interview, but it can be corporate. It could be like I don't necessarily think interviews are narrative, but I mean sometimes they show interviews in movies, but it will be interviews with the Blackmagic, because I do have to test these Sennheiser wireless that I'm using right now with the Blackmagic, because there were some issues people were having with the mic 3.5 millimeter input. I actually went over some of them in the past live stream from yesterday, so if you go back to yesterday's stream, you can check that out. I really wanted to go live today again, also because there was things I didn't go over yesterday that I wanted to do again. But next week will be more focused on the whole documentary interview aspect. And then, of course, if you guys have questions and you join us for the live broadcast, ask them live. I guess to wrap things up even more, to anyone who's joining us after this broadcast, if you guys stick with us, like I said, it's going to be every Monday at 6:30 Eastern Standard Time. We're going to do Blackmagic, kind of like a Blackmagic Pocket Talk series, where you guys all come up with some kind of idea of what I want to go over with, and you guys can ask questions. But until next time, guys, thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you later.